All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode live. If you're watching it on YouTube or X at the moment, or potentially listening back on your audio platform of choice on the Monday. But this is the Chelsea match review from your friends at the London's Blue podcast, part of the Men in Blazers Media Network, after a disappointing draw against Crystal Palace. It was looking pretty good up until the 82nd minute when Mateta got the goal in and made it so that Crystal Palace remains the most drawing side of the Premier League this season. It definitely does not put us in a good mood necessarily, or a positive position heading into this. I mean, when you have a list of teams that Chelsea have played recently, and you continue to pick up 2 points from Everton, Fulham, Ipswich, and Palace, not the type of record you want to be boasting about in this given moment. And I think, Nick, it's not a sky is falling moment, but it is a we are who we are realization and wake-up call for Chelsea supporters.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the 2 points picked up over the last 4 matches against teams that you should easily beat, against teams that you, frankly, for large stretches of matches played better than, had better stats, had better players on the pitch, all of these things. You get 2 points out of a possible 12. And, you know, I've been a Chelsea fan long enough to know that some of these things are blips and some of these things are longer term trends. And I am now, after this incredibly infuriating performance, and it was infuriating, we'll talk about all the ways that it was infuriating. I am now kind of settled into the fact that we are who we are. This team, I think, largely overperformed for the first handful of months of the season and is maybe reverting back to the form that we saw at the end of last season, which is, going to pick up the odd game where we're really excited about how we play, but by and large are going to be wasteful. By and large are going to give up stupid goals and not be able to kill games off, which is really kind of frustrating. So that's where I'm at.
Sam, as I think about a 3-word match review to sum up this one, I was going with regression, not progression for this Chelsea team. How much of this recent run or this result in particular do you feel as if this is going back to who Chelsea were, or is it just maybe, as we talked about in the preview pod, this fitness issue cropping up again? You had a great stat out there about goals conceded in the 75th minute plus for this Chelsea team. Great, through a match reviews, like why not subs? That's a great one from Cam to kind of tee you into this point on, is it regression? Is it a fatigue and fitness issue that Chelsea are running into? Where are you most concerned with this side?
I mean, where do you even begin? I think there are
a lot of narrow it down for the people.
Oh man, I mean, we talked about this on multiple review and preview pods, saying that you want to be in the Champions League spots, then you have to be flat track bullies. When you come up against sides that want to sit and don't want to take the initiative, then you absolutely have to demolish them. And with the wealth of attacking talent that we do have at our disposal, including the second squad, you have to find a way to use them really, really well. And for individual purposes, Noni and even Neto, for that example, not really performing to their levels. Maresca not really using his entire squad. Our number 8s are exiled. Genuinely, like no Carney Chukwuemeka, Cassidy plays as a 6, Dewsbury Hall's out of form. Even when he does play, he doesn't play as an 8. We have no underlaps. Our fullbacks, genuinely, it's trying to get them to overlap one game and then trying to figure out if your midfielders could do it. Today, Enzo was popping up on the left wing to underlap. And when you've got a right footer on the left-hand side, he has to underlap on his weaker side. So he's definitely using his weaker side to find those passes. He tried switching it second half, didn't work. So again, you're looking at it saying, what exactly is happening? Like, why is this guy still waiting till the 79th minute to make subs? Would he make them if you call them paninis? I don't know. But genuinely, it should be something on his mind. At this point in time, he should be looking at it saying, if it's not working till 60, and I love Nico Jackson, but if it's not working till 60, find a way to make those changes. Be bold enough, be brave enough. At least then you don't carry the blame on your shoulders saying, look, he's had an off day. for the longest time. But again, do you bring in Kunku on? Do you bring Felix on? Have those guys justified being picked? And my answer is no. So it's a paradox. It's a catch-22, and it's just one of those things. It's a test of this side, and I hope that we can get out of it, because it seems like we're slipping away from where we need to be.
I mean, Sam, I'm right there with you, and sandwich puns aside, which I knew.
Thought you would drop a hoagie reference in there or something.
No.
Not the day, not the mood.
I mean, I do. I mean, you're right though. Like, if it's not working to where you need it to work, you got to make changes. But Jackson was not the only one that could have been changed in this match, right? You're looking at someone like Malo Gusto who had a pretty damn poor performance. Where is the plan B there? Cucurella didn't have a great game. Like, what is your plan B there? Oh, you don't have anyone on the bench who can really fill those minutes? Then that's a poor team selection. Like, I think that's where people are frustrated. Is it's not just, hey, did you bring Guiu on in the 60th minute instead of the 79th minute? Totally understand why people are frustrated with that, and I think you're well within your rights. But it's not as if Jackson was the only one having a bad second half. There are a bunch of players out there who are having a bad second half. Caicedo had an uncharacteristically bad second half. Where are the plan Bs on the bench? And when you look at that bench today, you don't really see a ton of great options. You don't know if Reece is fit. As we are standing here today, not in training, not seeing, how he's being brought on. And I think if you're Maresca and you don't trust in Nkunku or Felix and you want to bring on Guiu, it's a bold choice. But, you're also in a situation where you have to, be comfortable with what comes after that, which is going to be criticism. I like Guiu. I think, he hustles and he's a good player, but he's not a Premier League player at this point. So you made a couple of big calls when you didn't have the bench to support any of the other calls that you need to make. And I think that is where you see a lot of frustration here. It's not just who did you bring on? It's, do you have any options on the bench that are really worth their salt? And it's hard to see that today.
Yeah, I think there's a couple points in there. So maybe we start to talk about just, where some of the things went wrong in this match. I mean, I think you could go to the way the fullbacks were necessarily not making the most of their opportunities. You kind of go through, Gusto's performance on the day. I think it was another in a line of performances that frankly is head scratching, to the point of why he's continuing to maybe kind of earn a start. We've seen now 2 consecutive matches where Reece James has been on the bench, not even apparently trusted enough to come in for even a minor cameo. I mean, we're seeing 10-minute subs from Maresca. So you feel like, could he get 10 minutes in this match just to even give us some hope, give us some opportunity? He had 1 clearance, he had 1 block shot, 0 for 5 on his ground duels, 0 for 1 on his aerial duels. Lost possession 17 times, committed 2 fouls. He was 1 for 2 on his crosses, 4 for 7 on accurate long balls, and 0 for 2 on his dribbles. I mean, in general, he did have 1 really good block, but that doesn't necessarily justify, how often he was in a position where maybe he was a little uncomfortable. I mean, it forced, I think, Neto at times was tracking back really far to cover at points. And, with Josh in his first Premier League start, it definitely made him, I think, kind of have to step up pretty heavily to cover off for where Gusto was leaving a lot of space, Sam, in the back that, Eze and Mitchell were really kind of finding some goodness with.
Yeah, we saw Munoz also pushing up when they went back and sort of trying to pin Cucurella back. And when those things happen, those little micromanagements in the game happen, then you have to respond in kind. And I still think that we're struggling to do so in major respects. But I'm also looking at sort of other worrying trends, and it becomes increasingly hard for me to pay attention to, the little things in games. But I think now this is the 4th game in a sequence of 4 games where it's just, I think, 2 goals scored. Today we had 15 shots and we had 1 on target. We had 1 big chance and we put that away. And everybody's talking about Nico Jackson missing a lot of half chances. I think he accumulated about less than half a goal in XG. So we aren't creating much. Palmer's the only guy with 5 big chances. Neto has 1 goal, 2 assists this season in God knows how many games. the attack has started off brilliantly, but it's trailed off spectacularly as well. And if we aren't doing what we were doing, where we were blowing teams out of the water and defensive issues were sort of like coming secondary, where we conceded 2 horrible goals to Spurs, but found the firepower to like turn it around, this is what happens. And that's something that we have to rectify. And how do you pick up a flailing attack? How genuinely do you pick up like 4 attackers, out of which 2 are very prolific up until now? So maybe a psychological thing, maybe a physical thing in terms of fatigue, but that's my sort of look at this.
Nick, just to kind of tee you into that, I want to talk about the attackers in general. I mean, Jadon Sancho with a single shot in this game, a brilliant assist, has surpassed his complete amount of assists at Manchester United today, which is a fun little stat that we can at least bring a slight amount of joy to us. But a single shot with a 0.03 XG. You had Pedro Neto with 4 shots and 0.14. Sam mentioned the fact that, Jackson was at 0.35 across the entirety of his 4 shots as well. I mean, when you have attackers that are, necessarily like, you have 9 shots amongst those individuals and you're not even over a half a goal. I mean, the quality of the shot is really, really poor, despite the number of the volume of shots we're getting. And that kind of indicates that something isn't working appropriately.
No, there was I think a fluidity, and I'm sorry if I'm coughing. I think I have the flu, so I'm just kind of battling here today.
This is Nick's flu pod.
Yeah,
he's about to pull out an all timer here.
I feel terrible, and then I watched that game, so I feel worse. But there was a fluidity to our attack when we were scoring goals earlier this year. It seemed like the players knew where everyone else was going to be, and were able to make pretty confident passes into really tight areas, knowing that there would be someone on the end of the ball. And it feels to me, Sam, and I don't know if you get the same thing, feels to me like maybe there's some trust that's eroded so far in the last few matches anyway, where you saw plenty of passes that were behind the player that they were intended for today in the final third. You saw Malo Gusto, for example, not putting an easy ball through to Jackson, who was alone and on goal. Just little stuff like this where we're not even putting ourselves in great positions to score some of the goals that we know we can score, because we've seen our team score those goals already this year. It just seems like the passing leading up to these chances is not there. And outside of a great piece of skill from Jadon Sancho, there wasn't a whole lot on offer here today.
I mean, hasn't that been the case? Like, we've sort of relied on individual moments rather than, just trying to put great sequences together. We've done that against the likes of Astana and Shamrock and all those other teams. But this happened last season as well, when we came up against the likes of Sheffield United, sides that we genuinely needed to beat. It looked like something just went horribly wrong. So you're absolutely right in terms of players should be making better individual decisions. I'm looking at Neto. I'm looking at Gusto. I'm looking at so many other, just single moments that you can pick out and say, okay, this should have been done. And when you don't take your opportunities against sides like these, I mean, the PPDA of Ipswich, I think was like 24-25. Fulham played, a midfield 5 that became a back 5. Ipswich played a back 5. Today, Palace came with a back 5. Every time those teams set up in that manner, then it becomes, I think, extremely tough for our set of attackers who love thriving, sort of going into space, running in behind. If you don't give them that, then I think we have the same issues as last season. So hopefully it's just a matter of maturing and maybe finding other solutions. But I do see other tactical limitations that desperately need to be addressed from a squad perspective, from Maresca, as well as from an individual perspective.
What's your top 1 or 2 tactical issues that you're kind of highlighting there? I mean, you can sum it up as things like we didn't score enough or we're conceding goals. I mean, that's kind of like the headline of it. But is there a sub headline or a sub bullet, Sam, as you think about those 1, 2, 3 tactical issues that you're looking for Maresca to address in a given match that you're most concerned about, that are giving you like the red warning signs?
Yeah, fullbacks. I think that's definitely like one place that I would highlight multiple times, saying, okay, what exactly is Gusto doing here? Because if you want him to be a conventional fullback, he's doing it. But then he suddenly ends up in the second half in this right attacking 10 spot that he often takes, and Palmer switches left. I'll have to probably watch the game again and see why that happened, because it worked really well in the first half where Palmer was on the right hand side, but then Gusto suddenly shifts where he takes pop shots, he takes like crosses that don't hit their mark. He's not really great in the half spaces, so you wonder why that change has been made. You look at Kukureya and you again ask those same questions, saying, okay, he's pretty combative, but he's not really a third centre back, and he isn't really somebody who's going to, aggressively give you something in the attacking third. So, what are the fullbacks doing, and how are they sort of helping your shape? Is one thing that I would address. I'd also like to sort of figure out if, like Maresca's Leicester, your number eights aren't really getting into the box and trying to figure out if they can, contribute from a goals assist perspective, then how are you rectifying it? You don't have somebody who's giving you prolific amount of assists. Enzo had this golden streak where he completely popped up and demolished it, but now you're finding those little things that are going wrong, like, cutbacks on the left foot. The same thing on the right side, when the midfielder gets into the box, he's not able to supply the right kind of things into the box. So do you switch Enzo to the right hand side to get him on a stronger foot? Do you switch your wingers? Like, do you put Neto on the left hand side and Sancho on the right, so that makes it a better supply line for you? Those are things that Maresca should be looking at, instead of just playing the same lineup over and over again, waiting till 80 minutes to make a change. I generally think that's two things that need to be addressed. And substitutions, everybody's saying it. I think we should say it. We had a problem with Pochettino doing it. We have a problem with Maresca doing it. Use your squad, especially when it looks like you're out of gas.
I mean, Nick, are you aligning on any of those as your kind of top area? I mean, is it the fullback one, number one? I mean, we talked a little bit about that at the top with conversation around Reece James being on the bench and not continuing to get selected or get an opportunity to come in. Or, are you kind of more concerned about the midfield's options and the way that they're getting deployed?
Huge concern about the midfield. I've been concerned about the midfield even when we were winning. I think this Lavia issue, which Tony brings up here, is completely bamboozling what was great about what Enzo was doing in that golden patch. Like, you don't have the cover. So inevitably, when teams play this low defensive block against us, and we have to bring numbers forward to try and counter that, because we don't have the insane amount of space that we were having earlier in the season to attack, we have to overcommit. And then it's just Caicedo back there by himself trying to do everything, which, as great of a player as he is not a way to defend properly. Basically him and Josh and Levi as like the three defenders, because your fullbacks are so pushed up. We're not even leaving one fullback back anymore. Like, we're pushing everyone forward, and it just creates this huge imbalance. And I think, to Sam's point, like, if you do have a little bit more balance in midfield, you are able to have, either a Lavia or, in my mind, Andre Santos come back from loan in January alongside Caicedo. You build a lot more stability there, and you probably alleviate some of the congestion that is happening in forward passing lanes too, which has been a huge problem. It seems like, at the end of the game, there were like 4 players within 10 feet of each other trying to get the ball because they were all pushed so far up, and it doesn't help anyone. Like, you don't have space to operate as a player, even if you do have individual skill to put into this. So there's a ton of problems that are not helped by not having an additional kind of more defensive midfield profile in there, because obviously Enzo Fernandez is not that. Like, we know that. And I'd rather have him up there creating chaos and doing some of the other things, but he was getting leggy by the end of it. He was making dumb fouls, probably was lucky to not get sent off with the second yellow because of the challenges he was making. So midfield for me is number one.
And, we talked a little bit about the fatigue issue and the subs. And I think Naku had a question here about, like, it maybe is the sub thing overrated, and like, when have subs impressed? I think we've seen, we've two elements here. If you look back at the last couple of matches, so this match against Palace, we had 2 subs. Match against Ipswich, we had 4, Fulham 1, Everton 2, Brentford 1. So we are not taking advantage of the fact that there is an opportunity to sub up to 5 players in a match. And, I think this comes down maybe to also the duration of time that they're getting on the pitch, Nick. We look at the fact, in this match, Guiu looked to be coming on much earlier than he was. Nico Jackson got a little extra time, off of one, I think, halfway decent move that he made. So maybe Maresca thought, okay, maybe he's a half yard away from getting a shot in here and kind of putting us ahead and clear. He only comes in the 81st minute. Madueke comes in the 86th minute. We saw, again, no Reece James. I mean, you're looking at, Tosin and Disasi on there. Those are necessarily not players you're going to be going to. And so it's really maybe Vega, Felix, and Nkunku as like the other options that you might have considered in this one. So potentially could have had the opportunity to go up to 5. I mean, how many subs are you potentially looking for, Maresca to make in a game? And when are you looking for him to make them? When were you calling for it in your mind in this one?
I'll let Sam take that. I just want to say a couple things about subs in general. Okay. Sometimes you will make a sub because you need to completely change the tactical makeup of your team, right? You need to try something else that hasn't been tried, or you need to switch a player out who's a little bit more adept at handling a particular situation. There's a tactical element. And then if you remember all the way back to Jose Mourinho, there's a sending a message to a current player who is starting, maybe not performing at a level sort of vibe with subs. And I think in both cases today, I'll let Sam deal with the particular tactics of it. You could have had reasons for both of those, right? You could have obviously figured out a way to shore up the fullback situation with Gusto not playing super well, or Jackson obviously not hitting the target in the way that he should have. And you could have sent a message to players who were maybe lollygagging on the ball a little bit, maybe not up to their particular level, and go, hey, that wasn't good enough. And if you want to continue to start, you're going to have to prove that you're better than this person that just came in, right? And I think in a team that is struggling and maybe not performing up to their level or their quality, both of those are acceptable reasons, and both of those could have been done as early as halftime if you really wanted to. So that's just something that I would say about the subs, is it's not always this pure tactical thing. Sometimes it's like, hey, Jackson, this wasn't your day, and you're going to have to watch the second half now and figure out what's going on. A little bit of art and a little bit of science.
And Sam, you want to tie into maybe kind of the tactical deployment of the substitutions? And, I think some of this, I do feel like, you would hope to have better options off the bench in this scenario, right? We know that West Fofana is now likely out for the entirety of the season. Benoit Badiashile is still not available. Lavia is not available. And so some of those players may have started in this match, and you would have sub players on who started in this match to refresh the side. But from an attacking perspective, I mean, there's not more players you would necessarily have available who would necessarily elevate to the level too. And so I think part of this is a personnel problem, but I think maybe part of it is also a deployment issue.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I feel like there are two sides that you can argue for with equal merit. Now, when you look at the bench, you've got 8 goal contributions in Madueke, but 5 goals and 3 assists, and immediately that pops out. But there was this game just very recently in this 4-game run where Madueke did come off the bench and he did absolutely nothing, which Nick pointed out. I think he had 4 touches or something odd that game, and looked like he was just not happy to be there. So if you are a player that only delivers on starts and you aren't willing to help when you come on, then what does the manager do? I think from a psychological perspective, that's extremely intriguing. Do you make that switch, or do you make it earlier to sort of offer a better incentive? But from a tactical standpoint, have you seen Nkunku at number 10 as yet in the Premier League? Somewhere where he's probably the best at as a support striker, we haven't. I get that Palmer is the best there, but can you figure out if you can, switch around and get both of them to play together behind Jackson? That hasn't been seen yet. I genuinely haven't seen that as yet. Today there was maybe an interesting tactical switch, and a very obvious tactical switch, something that Maresca has used often in the Conference League, which is instead of the left winger, you can get somebody like a Felix to overload the midfield too. We didn't see that either. So there are options available. There are things that you can do within your means, within your resources, and that's what I'm looking at Maresca saying. You've got somebody who's very, very good at moving in behind the last line. Why not use him in his position? Why use him as a number 9 where he's clearly struggled to match the physicality of? Premier League centre backs. So that's my only complaint. There are things that he can do, but he isn't doing them yet.
I think another point that people made in the chat, and we're seeing now kind of in the conversation online, Nick, is around Cole Palmer in this match. I mean, I think again, really, really nice goal today. I think comments from Prem Talk and others talking about how he cost us. I mean, I guess you would potentially have walked away with no points if he didn't score his goal, but a pretty unfortunate turnover that he makes that puts Chelsea in a really bad position, ends up leading up to the equalizing goal that they had, and Crystal Palace's ninth draw. I mean, he's had now 2 goals since the match against Brentford. Brentford was the Tottenham match was a 2-goal game off of 2 penalties, but no goals, no assists in Brentford, no goals, no assists in Everton, the 1 goal against Fulham and the 2-1 loss, nothing in the match against Ipswich Town, and now the 1 goal here. Not many times has he had, rough form. But I think it's very clear, like when he is in bad form, this Chelsea team is really going to struggle from an attacking and a creativity perspective. Thoughts on his total performance and then maybe his current run of form?
Performance was okay. Like, obviously it's uncharacteristic to see him give up the ball in a dangerous area like he did for the ball that leads to the equalizer for Palace. I mean, you can probably count on one hand when he does that in a defensive area. It doesn't happen that often. Like, he's usually incredibly adept at understanding those situations and playing out in the right way. I think he got caught, and that happens, right? I think what people are frustrated about is that he didn't hustle back and try and make a tackle after that. It was, you kind of get this with some of the star players where they kind of just like, all right, well, someone else will make this up for me, and then I'll try and go score on the other end, right? Like, that's kind of the mentality. And I don't know. I think it's frustrating, but I don't think we lost this game because of him. I think we're lost. I don't think we drew this game. It feels like a loss. I don't think we drew this game because of that one mistake. Like, I think there were plenty of other mistakes that happened that could have led to an equalizer in this way. Like, I can't be that frustrated, but I do think he has seemed a little bit perturbed lately. I don't know if you guys have sensed that from his body language. Like, things are not happening at the level or pace or quickness that he is trying to instill in the attack. And he's getting crowded off the ball in some areas. Obviously there are players who are not finishing chances that he's putting on a plate for them. I get the sense that he's kind of perturbed right now and maybe isn't playing at the level. Like, the one moment he has today, Sancho puts a great assist in for him, scores the goal. You think we're off and running. And then there are plenty of other moments where this is baked into my brain. He threads this incredible ball through to Jackson, and Jackson's one-on-one and just can't get the ball out from under his feet. And you could tell, like, he threw his arms down in frustration after that, because to him, at his level, that should be a goal. Like, no doubt about it. And so I kind of get it, to be honest. I kind of understand. And, like, great players will help their team lift up in those moments. I get people are frustrated about the turnover, but I hope that he gets back to some sort of joy again, because he's looked pretty frustrated.
I think that joy will come when other attackers are also involved in the conversation. I mean, yes, egregious error, definitely not the type that you want anybody making. But again, he's the only player who's scored a goal in the last 4 or 5 matches here. So, I mean, like, there's also the flip side of the coin. Like, it is a very thin line to walk against, like, criticizing, I mean, his error when you also have, I think, multiple errors from other players who, you had another day where Rob Sanchez's distribution can be described as nothing other than tragic, putting players into really tough positions, passing and distributing directly to Palace players. And yet I still see people waving around like a headline newspaper, extra, highest save percentage in the Premier League. Like, if you're giving the ball and turning it over to players to force more shots, easy shots for you to save.
Stat padding, Dan.
I'm not validating your stat. It's going out the window. So, I think Palmer, gets a lot of will get a lot of flack for this one, and maybe deservedly so for the error. But again, like, he is the Premier League leader in goals for this team. Like, I mean, it's like we would not be where we are, you know, in terms of in conversation and consideration if we were not, you know, we're heavily reliant on him.
I get that people are upset with turnover. Look at the defending after the turnover. No one to be found. Cucurella, nowhere to be found on Mateta. Gusto, nowhere to be found on Eza. And that wasn't the first time that happened. I think Josh and Levi get caught out on that because it happened so quickly. Again, there are multiple parties at play when a ball gets turned over near the center circle and leads to a goal that quickly. Be frustrated. I would be, and I am. Like, this is a terrible result for us, a very bad result. But it's not just down to Palmer losing the ball in midfield. Defenders weren't doing their job, period.
And we talked about this, Dan, in the preview pod. Like,
Yep.
Crystal Palace are the league's most prolific tacklers. They're third for second balls. They love this. They absolutely thrive on having two destroyers in that region, looking for those opportunities to nip the ball back, get it to those quicker players. And we earmark this as like a potential strength of Palace, and that's exactly how the goal came. And with regards to Palmer, I completely agree with both of you. I mean, if you look at our poor run of form in terms of like points dropped today and the last game against Ipswich, he's created 9 chances across those 2 games by himself. And if he hadn't scored the goal, we wouldn't even have like a lead to protect. So if it was anybody else, I would be breathing fire. But if it's Cole Palmer, you can sort of pardon him for sort of just giving up in that moment. But it should be doing better. I think when you're expecting a team like Palace to have that strength, then you should be wary of it. And like Nick says, it just one thing led to another, cascade of defensive catastrophes, and we drop points again. 7th goal conceded in the last 15 minutes of games, 18 in all of last season, and we aren't even halfway yet. So big issue.
So maybe, you know, talking about, I think one of the better stories, Josh Acheampong gets his start in this match playing as a center back, not necessarily as the right back solution that we thought we would see. You know, Nick, thoughts on Josh's overall performance, how he can kind of contributed on the day? I mean, I think in general, in a time when Chelsea are wanting for center back cover, wanting for defender cover, this was generally a very strong performance from him.
Very excited for Josh. Long may he reign in this position. I mean, he physically looks the part. Obviously, has more legs than Disasi, more legs than Tosin in that role. Was presented with some pretty difficult challenges today. I mean, Mateta is a bowling ball of a striker, really difficult to man mark. And Josh was put in some pretty tough positions with him one-on-one. I think Mateta was clearly trying to get on Josh's side, not Levi's side. That shouldn't be any surprise. But, you know, I think Josh handled it well. I think more than anything, the passing in tight moments when Palace did decide to press, he looked accomplished there. Like, there were turnovers, sure. There were misplaced passes. You know, he tried to play a couple long balls that didn't really come off. Sure, really, it's one of his first, major performances for Chelsea in the league. So you'll expect some of these things to happen. But I was impressed. You really wanted that goal for him. I think he probably didn't expect the ball to make it all the way through and then just kind of headed it wide. But I was really impressed with his performance. I mean, this was certainly better than what we've seen out of Disasi or Tosin in that role over the last couple of matches. So if we are truly, Sam, in a meritocracy, which I think you could argue over the last few years that Chelsea has not been a meritocracy, then what I saw out of Josh today was more than enough to get opportunities in the future.
Yeah, every touch was sublime. I mentioned that in the first half. It was beautiful, the way that he plucked your ball out of the air and just strode forward like gliding over water. Absolutely beautiful to watch. Not stuff that we've seen from any of the other center backs that have come in. And the fact that he was deployed in, the centre back positions next to Levi, that is a challenge. You're expecting to sort of maybe play right back, like you played in the Conference League, have a little more defensive protection as part of back three, but he was just in the thick of things. And against a guy like Mateta, against guys like Eze, who love running at people, it's not an easy task to do. So looks supremely comfortable. I think by the end of the first half, he had the most touches out of any player across both sides. And that just tells you a story, Like Ollie has that favorite meme saying, tap the sign, about don't go out to replace centre backs, just use what you have. And when you've been gifted a unicorn like him, it's great to have him in the side. I would love to see him at right back, and probably like be the third centre back, figure out if there's a dynamic there, and maybe have Tosin in there, and I have like three really really good strong centre backs, progressive centre backs in there. But overall, I thought he did really well against a pretty tricky assignment. So props to him, and hopefully lots more to come in the coming season.
We're still a few minutes away at time of our live stream recording here from Enzo Maresca's comments to fall in. He's just arrived for the post-match press conference. But I think the next point of conversation is, now we've talked about it a little bit. We feel like there's an issue with the quality of the squad at the moment. There's some fitness issues that are impacting that as well, and player availability. How is this changing our minds as supporters around what Chelsea need to do in the January transfer window, seeing that some of the players we thought who might be able to elevate the squad that came in the summer have not necessarily hit the levels that they need to be contributing? And, players that we have maybe trusted or over-trusted are really letting the total team down. I feel, and I know that we would continue to beat the drum, Nick, that, Blueco owns Strasbourg. Strasbourg is obviously in a tough spot from a relegation standpoint, but the prime asset is Chelsea Football Club. Andre Santos is 1000% a Chelsea player who is on loan there, and you have a bit of a midfield crisis. Like, to me, he feels like why aren't we doing everything we can to recall him yesterday, to have him be a part of this team for the remainder of the season? If Romeo Lavia is not going to be available for extended periods of time, it feels like he could have been a game changer in this one. And then, where are you ranking other spots where you'd like to reinforce?
How much time do you have? I mean,
how much time do you want to stream?
Yeah. I mean, 4 hours later, they're still here talking about this. Yeah, I mean, look, it's January 4th. You could have recalled Andre on January 1st, period. Like, that is how much confidence I have in him as a player. That's how much we need midfield reinforcement. Cassidy is not a suitable replacement for Caicedo. Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, clearly not a suitable replacement for Caicedo. Enzo Fernandez, not a suitable replacement. Lavia, not really healthy and hasn't really been healthy all year. I don't know how much more of a bright, blinking red light you need in a particular area of your team to recall what is genuinely a very good player who could do a genuinely good job for you, especially in games where you need critical passing to break through a low block. Like this game, Ipswich, go all the way back to Everton 4 games ago. You can use someone like Andre Santos to get there. Oh, and he leads Ligue 1 in tackles. Oh, and he's scoring goals. Like, I get it. Ligue 1, not the Premier League, whatever, but he's ready. And if Caicedo goes down, we'll finish 12th. Like, that is no hyperbole. Like, that is genuinely the most scary possible scenario for us. So tomorrow's January 5th. If he's not back, I'm going to freak out. Like, that's basically where I'm at with that one.
Sam, as we take a look at it, in the summer, we brought in Pedro Neto, we brought in Joao Felix, Dewsbury Hall. I'm just going by like spend ranking here. Jorgensen comes in, Penders comes in, Anselminho, Vega, Caleb Wiley, and Mark Guiu. Like, those were all and then we obviously had the loan transfer for Sancho, and then Tosin coming in as well. I mean, if you look at that list and you're looking at it now on January 4th, 2025, you're feeling way underwhelmed in terms of how much those individuals as a whole have contributed. I mean, that Pedro Neto is getting, I think, probably the most minutes out of that grouping. I mean, maybe Tosin and Jay and Sancho are probably the three who've gotten the most opportunities to contribute. A couple of those were ones for the future, as we tend to do in every window, pick up a couple players to hopefully hit the lottery on one of them. Where are you at within your ranking after this match? We talked a little bit about it in the preview pod in terms of positions you're looking at for Chelsea to go acquire a player in this January. Maybe base it upon availability for a player that you don't have to tell us who you're tracking yet. We'll get into that in future pods, but of where there is availability of the type of player you think would benefit Chelsea in the market, what position ranking 1, 2, 3 are you looking at where Chelsea should be prioritizing?
Let me give you like a pleasant surprise and say there are players that are available in terms of interesting situations, and they tend to sort of maybe fit in those right spots. I probably am in the minority here and say I would not recall Andres Santos in Jan, purely because I want him to play a full season in Ligue 1. And I know that the moment Lavia comes back from this mystery injury, I don't know how somebody tears their hamstring from a blow to the head. I think it's just a bad concussion, and we've talked to Kier about this, saying maybe it's just a nasty concussion and they've tried to hide it, disguise it a different way, and that's caused some issues. But I probably wouldn't let him back, because I know the moment Lavia comes back, he again goes back to bench filler, probably plays in Conference League games here and there, wouldn't probably make an impact. With four midfielders, it's hard to juggle and give them the game time they deserve. So let him just grow, give him the opportunity he needs. In terms of the market availability, if you're looking for a centre forward, Nkunku isn't trusted, Guiu isn't trusted, Randall Kolo Muani might be available on a loan. In January, do not buy. Just try and loan and try to supplement it until the summer. So if Kolo Muani is somebody who fits the mold, is very mobile, probably very close to an Alex Isak. So nobody thrives at PSG. So if you want to take that opportunity, I'd probably say take a gander at him. And if you're looking for somebody to be maybe like give Cole Palmer a little bit of support, Barcelona can't register Dani Olmo. So if that legal case is going on, try and figure out if you can get him like on a little bit of a loan for 6 months, and see if you can go from there. But that's the issue for me, Dan. I feel like after last season, when we got close to top 4, we shouldn't have targeted squad fillers. We should have really gone for like squad elevators, and none of the players that we found are particularly those. Like, I don't think Kieran Dew's Gallagher, so we've downgraded there. I feel like Vega could be somebody interesting. I would say interesting as in like a squad backup, like a squad member in like maybe 2 years. But he's not that guy right now. And I can say the same about Guiu or anybody of that matter. Even the guys that we were targeting for centre forward, and Samu and Duran, probably the next 2 years. So when do you target these profiles, and when would be the right time to spend big on them? And that's the big question. Like, when do you get your Allison and when do you get your Van Dijk? And I think that should have been this particular summer. And we failed to do that. So it leaves us in limbo, because we spent a lot of money on these players. And there's these sort of like feel a little content, sort of flipping them for profits, which we shouldn't be doing. We should be looking for the big guys, but probably not in Jan. Probably wait till summer. And unfortunately, like Nick says, you have to take it on the chin now, the mistakes you made in summer, and find solutions with what you have.
All right. Well, so as we kind of get to a close, Enzo Maresca's comments have come in on the post-match press conference, and I just want to kind of throw them at you, and you can react to any of them of your choosing, Nick. Nico Jackson, he mentioned for a striker, Enzo Maresca said sometimes they score all their chances, sometimes they don't score. He had 2 or 3 clear chances today, so that means he is there and ready. Hopefully next time he can be more lucky. On Romeo Lavia, he mentioned Enzo Maresca saying hopefully he can be involved in the next game, which is very nice, and at least some good news, though he said Reece James might play, so who knows how real that is. On needing to be more clinical, Enzo Maresca says the important thing is to create chances, because that means we're doing the right things, but then you need to take those chances. We try to be even more intense during the week when we are preparing for the game if the intensity or intention is already top. It's something we need to improve on. It's something we need to improve on, even if we are one of the best teams at the moment in terms of scoring goals. He mentioned on rest, after September. It's the first time we've had an entire week now. We have the chance to work in this week to prepare for an FA Cup game and then again for the Premier League. He also had plenty of positive comments on Josh's performance. He also said he felt like they did enough today to win the game. Thoughts, feelings on any of those takes from Enzo Maresca and what I would say is a pretty meh type of answers and responses?
Dan, how many shots on target do we have today?
I believe it was a whopping 1, Nick.
And how many goals did we give up?
We gave up 1 goal.
And we did enough to win the game?
We did not. we drew.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand that there is a if you're Maresca, it's a tough run. You know, you've lost against Ipswich, you drew against Palace and Everton, you lost against Fulham. Like, this is a dreadful, dreadful run against teams that you should beat. I get not trying to throw a shit fit and put everyone on blast. I'm fine with that. But none of those comments reflect the reality of the run of results. We had 1 shot on target. What are you talking about creating chances? Like, you're not really creating a chance if the end result isn't a shot on target. Like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't compute. Like, I'm frustrated because from what I saw, especially early in the season, he seems like a no bullshit kind of guy. And the last few press conferences, all I've seen from him is a version of bullshit. What I would have preferred today is if he would have come out and said, we simply were not good enough to win this game, and I got to figure out a different way to approach low blocks than what we are doing. And that is what I'm going to spend this rest week trying to figure out how to do. If he would have come out and said that, I think a lot of Chelsea fans would have been like, yeah, fair play. Like, you know, at least you're accepting the responsibility on the chin. This is 2 points out of possible 12. And you're now precariously sitting in 4th, but could easily drop down to 8th with another bad result. And no responsibility had there. Like, that's super frustrating to me.
Yeah, I mean, you're at a point right now. We've in this podcast we're recording. Arsenal and Brighton have kicked off. It's a 0-0 draw at the moment. Could absolutely change, but they are 40 points.
1-0.
Sorry, 1-0. Jeez,
1-0
that is amazing update there. Anyway, Nottingham Forest have not played yet. I mean, we're a point behind them, but they've got a game in hand. We were only a point ahead of Newcastle, who are in 5th place now, and on 35 points. We're on 36. City again have found their form over the last 2 matches, sit on 34 points in 6th place. Bournemouth will be our next Premier League game on 33 points. And then Aston Villa, after their win today, kind of finding a little bit of off and on form. They're on 32 points. So, 4 points separate us from 8th position right now. It has gotten much, much tighter in terms of that effectively 3 to 8 range, as there starts to be maybe a little bit more separation between now the 1 and 2 teams there. So I think as we kind of look ahead to the next run of matches, the Morecambe match, definitely a get right game in the FA Cup to give hopefully the Chelsea team an opportunity to get good. And then, a match against Bournemouth, who are definitely, playing much better football than they were last season, who are achieving and are in the top half of the table where Tottenham are not. I mean, there is an opportunity to potentially get caught out there too. So there's a lot that is going to be happening, hopefully over the next couple of weeks, from the sporting directors and the club to try to help get Maresca in a good position and Maresca to get the players in a good position so that there are more clinical shots, more opportunities. But look, minimum expectation is a top 4 finish, a UECL victory, and hopefully a very, very deep FA Cup run. We will be here to cover all of that on Loves Blue Podcast. This is going to be the end of our stream. So thank you so much for joining. We appreciate it. Back with more podcasts this week. Plenty of Matt Law this month as well. So stay tuned for that. But until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.